much, Rabbi Farkas, for asking me to speak. And at first, when I saw that I'm following Rabbi Levitin, Rabbi Kornfeld, that I've heard the lecture for since mid 90s or early 90s, I got kind of apprehensive. But then, after listening to the lecture, I said, thank God, because now I don't have to teach you anything, because you've been just giving a nice lesson in Rambam. So what I'm going to concentrate on is my experience with studying in general, but Rambam specifically. About 4 years ago, I wanted to study laws, halacha specifically, not law school. For one reason is because I kept covering Rabbi Farkas with too many minutia questions, and just kind of interesting. And eventually, I learned that's an obligation for us Jews to do that. And I learned the concept of cycles, where you start a cycle and complete a work over a certain period of time. About.org is an excellent website, and they have very easy to use cycles. So about 3 years ago, I started the daily mitzvah cycle, which Larry just mentioned, and I completed that with Rabbi Kaplan from Toronto area. Excellent. He has tons of lectures about that work, which are just absolutely fascinating. He brings references from all over the Jewish literature. On July 10th, 2020, I started one chapter a day cycle with Rabbi Gordon, blessed memory. He has a cycle for daily Chumash, daily Tanya, and daily Rambam. And I've been doing that since the beginning of the Tanya cycle. So I started Rambam about a year and a half ago, started Tanya, I don't remember, sometime in the fall. Yes. And I continue, like I said, I continued the Chumash and Tanya with Rabbi Gordon. Can't recommend those lectures enough. What I do, I'm kind of an audio kind of guy. I listen to lectures, and I learn way more from that than reading books. I also can take kind of eating, driving to study. So it's very convenient for me. I have my phone with me all the time, so I listen to it all the time. So I wanted, like I said, I wanted to do this because I heard Rabbi say that you are supposed to learn Rambam in a cycle every day. I had a lot of questions for Rabbi Farkas, and for whatever reason, the things that are not the most common laws are interesting to me. Rabbi Farkas is an excellent source, but during his lectures, which he gives every Tuesday at Microsoft, by the way, and here, of course, he can't go into details. So I kind of figured I should be going through and learning every single law that there is. And thank God for Rambam, because he has specifically that cycle. I also previously tried Talmud directly, tried Daf Yomi, and it was way too hard for me. I couldn't dedicate the amount of time that I actually needed to learn this. And if you study Talmud directly, it is an unbelievably hyperlinked work. It's fascinating to study, but you have to really concentrate, take notes, and most likely have a good teacher that tells you go here next. Books over there. so you can open the links. So that it does, and Gordon's he's funny, adds a lot of personal explanations, and he does a lot of reviews. So every single class he would repeat a little bit what he covered a couple of classes before. Tie all the subjects together. Sometimes he would read from English, say, here's where the law is coming from, just so you get the flow of it, and then he goes into minutiae details. As I said, I learn much better when I'm listening to a lecture. I can follow the lecture, and I can read the translation about that work, and really convenient. I can do it while I'm driving, although I don't while I'm driving. And the other thing is I can play, and this is easier for me to learn. I could play it at 1.5 speed, so it's time. I can pause, get back, and look stuff up on the net, which I often do. So what I did not expect when I first started this, HaRambam is unbelievably organized. I can't stress that enough. And after looking at Talmud, I was expecting to skip around different subjects because that's what I thought the style of literature was. And you don't. It goes from subject to subject in a very single chapter, or every single section starts out with a list of halachas that's very, very good, that are going to be covered in that chapter. Then he goes through definitions of what he's talking about, and then he goes on to go into scenarios that I guarantee you nobody has ever thought of. I know it comes from the Talmud. I know the Talmudic authors went through those scenarios, but sometimes people do crazy things just to get ritually impure, like jump between trees and stuff like that. Like I said, brilliant organization. You don't really need to learn any other book if you want to study laws. Not to say that you shouldn't read other books, you should, but if you just want to study the laws, he got you covered. You don't need to stick around different sections. He has, or there's footnotes in translation here and online. So if he's referencing some previous law, he tells you what he's referencing. And because of Rabbi Gordon's style, he very often just repeats it. So everything is in context. You don't have to remember a ton of stuff in order to follow what the lecture is all about. Because he goes into a lot of details, especially towards the end of each section, it can get, frankly, kind of boring. You go into, like right now, we're going through different vessels, or I'm sorry, different types of food and how they get ritually impure. So the scenarios are absolutely crazy, and those are the ones that you kind of go through and you kind of try to understand, but frankly, I would never even come close to remember 70% of it. But other things are either pertinent right now or just kind of interest. Rabbi Gordon also adds Hasidic insight. I mean, jokes, so it's much easier to go through the boring parts. Some of the logic that HaRambam uses, rabbinic logic, doesn't follow my logic. So I'm working on that to kind of improve my logic to kind of understand how some of these things are derived. Very often, things are said to be disrespectful or not looking correct, not looking good. I don't understand really why, because we're in modern times and everybody looks kind of like that. One of the examples is the high priest is not supposed to have long hair. Right now, people have long hair. They look kept. Nobody's complaining how they look. Besides the laws, I learned a lot of other things, which are explained either by Rabbi Gordon or footnotes. Like I do not know how to plant things, and a lot of the laws are agriculturally related, and so I'm taught how they used to plant fields, how they measured how good the fields are, how big the fields are, what they're worth. And, since I never thought about it, it's kind of news to me. How people interacted, the society at different eras, and the reason why rabbis added certain restrictions to prevent people from violating the biblical law. Of course, a lot of it is political, like any other society. Rabbi Gordon reads things in Hebrew and in English, and many terms are repeated, and that extends my, as I call it, useless Hebrew, Hebrew that cannot possibly be used right now, other than learning Torah. So it's not useless, but ox boring other ox and things like that. So I know how to say ox. Parchment, how to manufacture parchment. I never knew that there was a very precise and very specific way to manufacture parchment. And which side of the parchment you can write Torah on, which side you can write Tefillin on, but it's all there. So one of the benefits is many things in Chumash make more sense, probably because of these anthropological kind of studies. I find similarities, since I'm also doing the Tanya, and how my Rambam organizes subject and how Alter Rebbe organized the subject in the Tanya. The subject matter is different, but the organization is interestingly similar. I'm always amazed how you use some conclusion in one set of laws and apply it to a totally unrelated concepts in another set of laws. And every time I start a new chapter, I'm always just amazed at how Rambam organizes things and the amount of memory of all of this, how he could keep that entire Talmud and the associated works in his head in order to organize things in that way, in such a clear way. Just especially when you start new sections. Favorite parts for me were introduction, Sefer Mada, or Mada. Was passed. It's nice to know the sequence of all the stuff that passed the law, and there's a little bit of history there. And the Madad covers the theological base, super organized, and it gives you good recommendations on how to study this information. Sefer Zeraim. By the way, I'm only about halfway done. a little less than halfway done. So I only know a few of them, or half of them. Sefer Zerayim covers how tithing works, also how the economy worked, how people that actually worked the land supported the Kohanim and supported the Levim, and how the Levim and the Kohanim were teaching people to get the gifts that were supposed to be given to any Kohen or any Levi, and that's how the people picked which one, which of these they were given to, which Levi and which Kohen they were given gifts. It's unbelievable how many things people have to know in order to do things correctly. The laws of tithing, for example, you have to take a harvest, you have to divide it into part for the Kohen, and you have to do part for the Levi, and you have to, if you have a different, let's say, the apples, so you get one set of apples, now you have a different set of apples, you have to keep each pile separate, which one you separated the tithe from. It's hard to understand how people kept track of all that. And also, if they made a mistake, how do you correct those mistakes? Also, the details are very complicated. And you actually have to admit that you have to make a mistake. You have to realize, not even admit, but just realize that you made a mistake. So the next one is Sefer Avodah. Rebbe said, like, look, the Mashiach is coming any time now, and we need to know these laws specifically. I was always fascinated by the temple and sacrifices. Maseh HaKarbanot lists the details of all the offerings. So one of the things that amazed me is the amount of meat that the Kohanim have to eat, especially during holidays. I cannot possibly imagine not Kohanim eat the 2 cows in one night. And the Paschal sacrifice, if you calculate how many sheep or goats you have to bring in during midday till the end of the day and roast them, it's unbelievable. I have no idea how that was physically possible to bring in to a small area in Jerusalem that many goats. You can only have 3 groups. So one group goes in, everything is serialized. Kill the goat, you take blood, you pass down like a bucket brigade, you pass down the blood, sprinkle it on the altar, and then the first group goes, the second group comes in. You have 3 groups. You have to, if you calculate how many of them you have to do per second, I just couldn't believe it. Anyway, so that's it for my experience. If you take any questions, anybody that is interested in a Russian version, unfortunately, Chabad doesn't have the Russian cycle yet. Chabad .org doesn't. There is a Mashiach.ru that does have the Russian translation. Since it's very hard for me to read biblical information in Russian, I don't know how good it is, but it very looks right. And Toldot.com has lectures that are about specific topics. They don't have lectures that are in a cycle. And if anybody needs help searching for this stuff, Question? Oh, and one more thing, if you do start, hopefully, a cycle in Rambam, you can do it in the name of Rabbi Gordon, who passed away 6 years ago, because he's a great lecturer online, especially. It's amazing how he gets the message across and how he ties several pieces of information together.
Thank you.